And again, it's Lisa from Been There, Got Out. Let's see if the third time's the charm. So today's guest is Amber Chapman, and she is a writer and also the survivor of a very high conflict divorce case and custody battle. And Amber, I see you. I'm going to pray that this works on here. It was fine when we just did a little video chat about 10 minutes ago. But
I got you.
I think it's gonna work. Almost flip the camera around. I've done the same thing.
I just have to figure out how to do that.
Okay,
wow.
so right above the little screen where you are, there's four. There you go.
Hello.
Perfect. We did it. Yay. All right. So this is not a tech test. We are on for reals. And thank you so much, Amber, for joining. I was just saying, we met through some random networking thing and realized that we had a lot in common. And one of the major things that we have in common is that we both have survived a very high conflict divorce slash custody issues, etc. So I thought that it would be excellent for you to come on and talk as someone who's made it through and on the other side with children, because I know when I first started this process, I was terrified. I didn't realize that it was going to go on for this long. You know, I told you with my own case, which is not custody at all anymore, it's financial, but I didn't know it would be 9 years and I'm still dealing with it. But I kept thinking my kids' lives are going to be ruined. And I know with our clients and in our community, that's the number one fear. How are my kids going to get through this? How is everything going to be okay? Are their lives over? Oh my gosh, this intact family is now destroyed. I wish I could save it, etc. So why don't you quickly just introduce yourself and then we'll get to some of these important issues.
So my name is Amber Chapman. I'm a divorced mom of 3. My kids are 25, 21, and just turned 19. I thought like I would just kind of sweep all this under the rug when he was 18. And apparently, I'm realizing that I need to talk about this. So that's why I'm here.
Yeah, and thank you. I know you said when we talked about it, it was like you hadn't talked about this in a long time. You probably didn't want to, like you said, you didn't want to think about it. You didn't want to talk about it. But as someone whose kids are now grown and adults, it's a little bit safer, hopefully, to talk about, because some of the things that you've been through are things that our people are dealing with right now. And I think it's important to offer some wisdom and tips and especially comfort that you and your kids are going to get through this, and the kids are going to be okay, even though it doesn't feel like it. It's one of the most terrifying experiences that anyone could go through, man or woman. We always stress that we have a lot of women listening, but we help men as well. So your kids are 25, 21, and 19. It's 2 girls and a boy?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So how did this, I don't know where to start. When it started, what did you find were you worried about the most? What were your kids struggling with the most? And how did you address those issues?
So when it started, my 19-year-old son was barely a year old. I asked for a divorce, and that took a year to complete. And that wasn't just the beginning of it. I think what they struggled with the most was the confusion between the 2 households. When my ex-husband and I were parenting, we were a great team, and he was a great father up until the point that I requested a divorce. And the 2 households were very different. My gosh, my 2 households were very different. Parenting styles became complete opposite, and there just started to be things where my kids were struggling to figure out who was the right parent and who was saying the right stuff and what they were supposed to be doing. They were confused.
Talk about that a little bit, because I'm imagining, and I think I might know, but I want to hear your details, and especially because you're a writer, I know you're good at details.
So one thing that just comes to mind instantly is that when my ex moved on quite quickly to a new relationship, one of their rules, the parents sat the children down of both families, her family and his, and explained to the children that they would now call the step parent by mom or dad. And that was probably the biggest flaming red flag I saw right in the beginning, if there weren't a million others. And that was incredibly confusing to my almost 8-year-old who came home, and it was like everything else that came home after they would spend time with my ex, is that I would have to do damage control. And the damage control consisted of reprogramming them to understand what was right and what was wrong, and what was being said to them was wrong. And so my 8-year-old said, "Oh, mommy came home. We're going to call so-and-so mom." And I thought, that doesn't make any sense. I tuck you in. I take care of you every day, et cetera, et cetera. And she said, "Oh, but it's okay." And I said, "Why is it okay?" She said, "Well, because we were told that we call you mommy, and we would just call this person mom." And I said, "Well, it doesn't make any sense, because what are you going to call me when you get older?" And she goes, "Mom." "Mommy, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize." And the tears just came. And so it was ridiculous things like that. Like they live with me. I take care of them. I tuck them into bed, bathe them, taught them how to brush their teeth, potty train. I'm alive. No one's going to call someone else mom unless they would like to call them mom. And that would take time for a child to do. And it shouldn't be forced on them.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
So that's just one. I think, there's others where there's safety. I use car seats. They didn't use car seats. I talked, we would do healthy habits. They wouldn't do healthy habits. It was just things like that were just confusing to them, where, eventually they realized that being in the more routine, safe environment was the one that was the safest. But it was excruciating trying to explain what I'd done for 4 years and 2 by the time we were divorced. I mean, how do you tell a toddler to call somebody else mom when they have one and they can't even speak a full sentence?
Right. I want to get more into some of that, because again, this is an issue that our clients deal with, talking about damage control. So you talked about healthy habits. What were things that were a contrast between your house and the other house? And we already know that most of the time courts don't deal with that kind of thing.
They don't. That's not recognized. I wasn't able to bring up a whole lot of stuff for fear of looking like a mad woman in court or before court proceedings. So it seems like attorneys will try to stay away from that. I'd have to say, so brushing teeth at bedtime, routines of getting up, meal times were definitely inconsistent. We had 3 meals and 2 snacks. I mean, I'm dealing with a toddler, a preschooler barely, and an 8-year-old, and then you go send them to someone else's house, and suddenly it's, well, you eat too much, that's why. Or the rule is you can't go in the cabinet by yourself, or you can't eat before we go to church. It was just very confusing, not only not healthy. My kids came home after a half a summer with mouths full of cavities because it just wasn't enforced. And so sure, kids don't want to brush their teeth. They don't. But you as a parent are instilling these things into them because it's the right thing for them. Medications. My son had asthma when he was young. He was prescribed medications. I was told that I'm not a doctor. What do I know? And they're not going to distribute those medications to my child, who was in the hospital several times for a breathing issue. It was detrimental, and we had problems with that.
How did you deal with it with the 2? Let's forget the medication stuff for now, but just the diets with kids not being able to eat when they're hungry, being monitored, not letting them go into a cabinet by themselves when they're 9-ish years old. How could you deal with that with the kids when you're not there to do anything about it?
I had no control. I had absolutely no control. If it had to do with car seats and car safety, sitting in the front seat with an airbag, when my 4-year-old came to me, who's very outspoken and always has and will be, said, "Mommy, I can sit in the front seat at Daddy's house. Why can't I sit in your front seat?" How I dealt with that? I took her out in the parking lot in my car. I plopped her in my front seat. We didn't drive anywhere. I flipped down the visor and I said, "You can read that. What does it say?" "It says I could die." I said, "Well, that's why you're not in my front seat." And there are the tears, absolute reality. I'm not lying about that. It's right there. I know car seats, I explained to my son, you ever get into a car with anyone, including your parent, and they don't have a car seat for you, it is for your safety, and I'm sorry, but you need to be your voice. So I guess I empowered them by explaining to them that it was good for them, and not that, and I didn't down the parent. I just said, you know, this is a choice that this other parent is making, and it might not be the right choice for you. We do it at home for this reason, and if you want to keep yourself safe, you need to speak up. The eating, I had a very short, brief discussion with the other parent and said, we feed our children 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. And I was asked, what do you think you are, Mother of the Year? I said, yes, I am. So feed our children properly.
Did it work? Did they start being able to eat?
I think it may have improved, but to this day, my son still will talk. He's 19. He will still claim how traumatizing it was to starve through a Catholic mass on Sunday. 7 children being told they can't eat before church. Catholic mass is law.
Wow.
He still talks about it. Oh, yeah. If I might add, my adult daughter started to show signs. This is how I found out something was wrong. My oldest daughter at 8 years old would start gorging herself before, which I didn't understand what was going on. I said, why are you eating, this way? It was at dinner. It was because she knew she was going to be hungry when she went there. And we had a discussion, and that's how I found out. So that's how it first started. But to this day, I still think that it is a traumatizing memory for them. And I was told that, and my 2-year-old, or once he became 4, 5, 6, 7, was told that he just ate too much. He just wanted too much. And it was because they had 7 kids. How can you afford to feed 7 kids? I can understand. So they found ways around situations to try to curb the eating habits of the children, or to get them free food in certain areas. I'm not at all against accepting charity, but that's not how they went about it. It wasn't like going to the church or the food pantry. It was different ways. And so it was ugly. That scared me. I had no control, but those are the things that I tried to use.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing too is that even from a really early age, because you couldn't intervene, you couldn't go over there and force the other parent to do what you felt was healthy, or what most people would consider healthy, like feeding kids when they're hungry and making them brush their teeth, is teaching your kids the reasons behind something, and understanding that they do need to advocate for themselves, because you can't be there for them. We also talk a lot about, with our people, and I know in my own situation, where kids unfortunately grow up a bit faster in these situations because they do have to learn to speak up. And there's positive consequences for that, but it's unfortunate that they are forced to set boundaries and advocate for themselves from an early age, when you think a parent would just know to take care of them, or know to discipline them, or to teach them right from wrong. All right, let's talk a little bit about also how difficult it is, and the need for support through something like this, which we know lasts years.
So I just paid off my attorneys when my son, like a month before my son turned 18.
And you said you divorced when he was 1.
Uh-huh.
So 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So I highly recommend it. And my attorney at some point was willing, both of them were willing to do, I had 3 actually. They were willing to take payments over the time that the course. I was a good client as far as paying, except in obliging the rules and whatever we're supposed to be doing. The support system, I had people advocate for my children to my face. I have several people that I thank almost weekly on a random basis, and I just text them because I watch my children. Okay, I brought my tissue, Lisa, this happened before.
Yeah.
They didn't just look me straight in the face and say, you need to do this for your kids. I know you're afraid, and I know that this is scary, but your kids need X, Y, Z. I could go into a million reasons. I still text several people to say thank you for those words, and they were behind me. And I remember the times that I wanted to quit, and they were behind me then too, and said, your kids need you. And it was hard, but you need any support you can get. I don't care if it's social media, I don't care if it's someone at work, if somebody at your church, if you go to church, if it's friends. Mine was a neighbor I barely knew. We had coffee and hung out on her balcony. And one day she just said, Amber, they were away, and she said, Amber, your kids are struggling. They're trying to balance being there and here. You need to get full custody. And at the time we were doing half, 50-50, 6 weeks and 6 weeks. Long distance. And I won't ever forget those people. You need those people. You can't do it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you said you felt like giving up. Do you feel like your attorney was one of the supports? I know I did with mine. Sometimes we're not supposed to rely on attorneys for emotional support, but often they're the first and only person who knows all the details.
So I will say that, yes, there's a period where I wanted to give up, and I'm embarrassed to even admit it, because if my kids knew it, they would probably slap me. But I remember cleaning out one of their closets one day. It was like homeschooling art closet or whatever, and I was in my apartment, and I just started bawling, and I was just tired. And it was just no particular thing. It was just, I just was tired. I might have been coming up against a court date, or it might have been, just more and more money and paperwork. And I thought, I can't do this. Maybe they're just better off. Maybe I can't do this. And one of my friends said, you have to do this. They mean everything to you, and you're doing the right thing. And it was just that one sentence or two sentences, and it was enough. My attorneys, I have to say, my attorney in Connecticut was outstanding. I listened to every word he said to me, and he asked me questions and listened to me. But emotionally, I could not rely on him because of the matters, you understand. And then I had my next attorney, when I transferred my case to Ohio, was brutal. I was told that she hated single mothers. So she obviously had a bad taste in her mouth. She was no support, but she was an amazing attorney, and she did what she needed to do and got us what we needed to get, which was the betterment of the kids. And my last attorney was here also in Ohio, and he was very understanding. He listened all the time. So I had a little mix of the three.
Yeah, that's great. Was there anyone who you felt should have supported you but wasn't there for you? Because, when these things happen, sometimes the people you think will be there are not the ones who get it, and people also fall away. Did you have anything like that happen?
I don't think I lost any friends over it, if that's what you're asking. I think that there were certain people that thought divorce was the wrong thing because they were children involved. And I think, I know my ex was totally against it. I got a barrage of guilt trips and whatnot. The attorneys seemed to be on board for whatever reason. Some were for the children. Some might have just been in it to do it. Some, understood some of the situation. I want to say that my own kids in the beginning weren't really on board.
They were not really on board. All right,
the baby
about that, because I know something from when I was getting my domestic violence certification. We talked about one of the obstacles to a divorce is the kids themselves being against it. So get into that a little bit.
Okay, so my oldest, like I said, started at 7.5. She was a pretty quiet, did everything by the book kind of kid, and started to become opinionated, somewhat combative, contradictory to some of the things I would need to be doing. She was the message giver from the other, from the ex, and that made it very difficult because she was the oldest. And then the second one, like I told you, my middle child, very outspoken, strong-willed, wanted to know every facet of everything. Who started this divorce? Why is it started? Why isn't Daddy living here? Why this? Why that? I was questioned what I was doing with child support. I was questioned why, I told you why they couldn't sit without car seats, why they couldn't sit in the front seat of my car. I felt like the world was against me because those are the people that I was protecting, and they lived in my own house.
Yeah. I mean, did it ever stop, or how did you do it? Did you just keep answering? And also, as you're saying this, I'm thinking that a lot of times the kids become little spies because the other parent is grilling them on what you're doing. Did you have to deal with that?
Yes, I just didn't know it was happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I would start getting into conversations. My philosophy was I do not talk about my ex while my children are with me. So my philosophy was to pretend he didn't even exist unless it was a parental situation or the kids wanted to talk about him or whatever. But I just found myself having to kind of defend myself often, and it eventually did stop. The older they got, and the less I was the less I brought him up. Obviously, I didn't need to, but the more he brought me up, the more they would just bring that stuff back. And that it was just free flowing. They had no idea. He had no idea that we were close. I tell you, I am still very close with my kids. So the fact that they would come back and go, Daddy said this, or Daddy said that, or just Daddy has this ringtone on his phone for you, and it happened to be Gold Digger. And I thought, wow, that's disgusting, and that's couldn't be farthest from the truth. And just the nicknames, I would hear the nicknames that were for me. So they became, I didn't even have to ask them anything. They would just come home and go, eat an apple. Hey, what do you think about this? Or, hey, Daddy said that. I think the hardest times of those were when the kids would cry and ask questions that didn't make any sense, or they would ask for advocacy, and I would have to try to intervene without making a mess of things.
Can you give an example of that?
How to intervene without making a mess of things? Well, let's see.
Like when they would ask for advocacy, like they wanted you to help solve something, and you had to get in the middle of it.
Sure. Yes. So, my oldest, you had mentioned how sometimes they, I don't know, I can't remember what you said, but I want to mention it later if I can remember. My oldest and my youngest like to call mom and call home. And that was supposed to be part of the agreement. Well, that was never followed. And so when they would say, my oldest became the advocate for the youngest. That's what you said. You said they have to grow up sooner. They do. Well, unfortunately, they were put in a lot of positions like that. And my oldest became the caretaker of the smallest, the youngest, and so did the oldest of that family, the child. So she would come home and say, my son, she'd say, well, his legs hurt, or he was scared of a scary movie, and no one would do anything. Well, I mean, what am I supposed to do? It's done and over with. Or my middle would come home and say, I had to clean feces off of Legos that sat in the tub because that was part of my job, but I refused to do it. Again, remember, middle child, she was the outspoken. I refused to do it, and it was still there when I got back. I don't want to do it. It's like I had to really pick my battles. I mean, my oldest would just say, I wanted to call you and talk to you, but I got yelled at. He took me in the other room and he ripped out the phone on the wall. And I mean, it's like a lot of these things I wanted to bring to my attorney. I wanted to bring to him, but there was so much. It's like, how much can I say or do without just making a mess of things?
Right. And spending tons of money on things that the court can't really do much about because they don't get involved in the minutia. Their bar is really high with custody factors in terms of changing custody and stuff like that, even though the examples that you gave, some are absolutely disgusting and scary. That alone is generally, and I'm not an attorney, but it's generally not enough to change custody.
No. And a lot of our situations were like that. Excuse me. It was either so close to the wire or sounded so ludicrous. With all the lies that were being told about me already, I was probably just going to look like a crazy person. I had to really tamp down the emotions while trying to counsel my children through it. And that's what part of damage control was, by saying, yes, honey, I know that is so wrong. This is not right. You're doing the right thing by speaking up for yourself. I mean, how do you tell a 6-year-old but that's what you have to do. I mean, that's what I had to do. If I couldn't be there, they had to have that voice of reason and do it themselves. Like, hey, there's no car seat in there. I'm not getting in.
Yeah, like a little kid having to advocate for themselves.
And it happened right in front of my face. Came to pick them up, drove 10 hours, opened up the van door, turned around and said, where's my car seat? The father turned to me and said, could I please borrow your car seat? And that was after the talk. So I watched my son in action at like 6. My kids are really lightweight, so they always had to have boosters or something like that to make that seatbelt safe. So
Yeah. Out of curiosity, did you let him borrow the car seat, or what happened?
of course, I let him borrow the car seat while I cussed all the way home for 10 hours. Like, what do you mean you drive 10 hours to get your kids for 6 weeks and you don't bring a car seat? I don't even get this. So, yes, nice mother. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, that's like a huge safety issue. So even though, yes, why give it, whatever, but that's your kid's safety. Did you want to leave him there 10 hours away with no car seat for 6 weeks?
Indeed, he knew he wasn't getting in the car with, my child knew he wasn't getting in the car with it. I wasn't letting him get in the car without it, I mean. So, yep.
Yeah. So, this is really, really hard and really scary too, because you think, here's these little kids. Yes, I'm teaching them to advocate for themselves, but they are dependent on the other parent, really dependent, because they're really young kids. They're not even teenagers yet. And it's like you have to keep your mouth shut. Right. What are some other things that you learned with going through the court process? What to do, what not to do?
I'm glad that you asked that, because I think that was a success factor for me, is the ways that I approach things. So I was told once, show no emotion. And not knowing the state of my ex until now, where certain personalities are in a public light now, and I understand more. Understanding that emotion was just going to be used to strangle me or to get away with something else. No emotion. I stuck to the facts. I advocated for the children. The relationship was over. It was done with. I still loved my ex-husband when I divorced him. He was my best friend, I thought. And when it came to court, I had to realize that nothing mattered more than doing the right thing and winning. And I'm not a competitive person, and that was part of my personality issue. I want to say it's not an issue as a character trait, but it was an issue when I was faced with someone like that. So definitely having someone to go through the process with you in litigation, and if you don't trust your attorney, I would fire him and get somebody else, because I wouldn't do it. I would do it again, but I wouldn't do it again without an attorney. And I had to hang on to one of my attorneys that I didn't want to, because that attorney was doing what I needed that attorney to do in court. And I knew that I had to stick with it, and I knew I had to pay that attorney, and that was okay with me, because I knew the steps they were taking were the right ones. And we would not be here. We would not be here if I gave up, or if I worried about the money, or if I didn't find. It took me 12 attorneys when I was in Ohio to get my case transferred from Connecticut to here. But it was crucial. It was a crucial move.
Let's talk about that. Relocation, big deal, often really hard to get if someone is fighting you on it. This comes up constantly with our clients and other people in the community. Tell us about your relocation experience.
Oh my, I don't know if we have time, Lisa. So I was told in the beginning that I will never take my children away, and I think that I did not even consider it, but I was grateful for the idea. I needed to start over. I didn't really feel like where we were was the right place, and I had the opportunity to move. So after 1 year of keeping the kids in their family home, adjusting to divorce and the differences, I proceeded to explain that I was going to take the kids and move out of state. And aside from the emotional guilt trips and the I'm doing the wrong thing and the classic, you go and get yourself set up in your new apartment, I'll keep the kids until you get settled. Yeah, no, that wasn't flying, but nice try. Glad. I hope someone hears that needs to hear it. Don't let go of your kids for a second in that manner. Don't leave the state without your kids. I stayed in that state for an entire another year just so that I knew when I left, I was leaving with them. We had custody agreements across states, but I didn't wait. I did not leave until that was done, because I don't know if this is true, but I felt like I would have lost rights and I might have been in a bad situation. So with that, it was searching for attorneys in both Connecticut and Ohio, and it was horrible. It was hard to find somebody. No one wanted to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I don't know how. After 12 attorneys, did I actually find somebody that said, "Sure, I'll take it"? And I thought, no one else wanted to, and so I filed in my state. I'm sorry, I filed before I left, so yeah, it took me a year, and then I had to find somebody else here to transfer the case here. I did realize that we had both moved to 2 different states, and regardless, because I filed first, I had the upper hand. So all of the litigation, I didn't know this. I just did it because I was here. Like, this is where we're living. I was told by an attorney that I didn't hire. You'd be best to be the first one to file and do it ASAP. It doesn't even matter if it's not the right attorney at first. It's ASAP because the first one that files has a better chance of winning, because in 2 different states, I was already filing paperwork, and that person would have to fly here and fly back and fly here and fly back.
Interesting.
Very, isn't it? I was
Thanks for that tip. That's a really valuable tip. I mean, the other stuff too, but wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Didn't even know it. I was just like, wow, all right, quick, let's go. And it definitely proved to be difficult for that person, although be prepared, there will be extensions and things like that. And that eventually, though, my attorney, that was the 3rd attorney, figured out that it was a game that was being played. And I remember being in a conference, and the attorney actually called me and said, so-and-so, your ex is calling. He wants to postpone again. What do you want to do? I said, no way. We're not doing it again, because it was a tactic. Mm-hmm. You have a say. You don't realize you have a say, but you have a say. My attorneys listen to me.
That's so important. We're actually doing a big presentation tonight as part of our Client as Consumer series about how to advocate for yourself with your own attorney. And our Canadian partner, David Morneau, has flown in to do that. Why? From an attorney's perspective, it's beneficial to have an educated client. So it is very important to make sure that you have an attorney that listens to you, not that they follow everything you say, because remember, they're the lawyer, but at least collaborates with you in terms of strategy, because this is your life and your kids, and after this, they're going to go on to the next case, and you have to live with it.
So if I might, I'm excited that you have that coming up. If I might mention that, so with each attorney, for a specific reason, they each allowed me to follow my gut, because I knew this person. I had been with him for 12 years. I was married to him for 10. I had dealt with him for the last year, 2, 3, 8, through this divorce proceeding, etc. My attorneys listened to me. One said, how do you want to proceed with this? I said, I know him. This is what he's going to do. This is what we're going to do. The next attorney, well, what do you want me to do? He's saying, blah, 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 give me a break. His classic line, give me a break, give me a break. Well, I've given you enough breaks, and guess what? I know you, and I know what you're going to do, and we're not going there. And that attorney allowed me to. And then the 3rd attorney called me and said, we're on extension 3. I don't want to do it, but it's totally up to you. I went, we're not doing any more extensions. We're done. So identifying whether or not your attorney is listening to you, and knowing that you know that person better than they do, I think that's key.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we say all the time. Like, no one knows your ex better than you do, and no one cares more than you do, because this is your life. So I love that you said that. All right, let's talk about the controversial term of parental alienation, which we know is also abuse by proxy, or trying to erase the other parent. What's your experience with that?
Well, I'll tell you this. I was just introduced, again, just fluke sort of thing. I don't believe in irony, but definitely the paths had to cross. So I never heard of parental alienation. Never heard of it until someone was referred to me for a writing project. When I sat down and listened to this person's story, my heart broke. Then I went into panic mode, and I don't even have to. My kids are grown, got a great relationship, my divorce is over. I was this close to becoming a victim of parental alienation. Lisa, this close. I wrote a fine line and I didn't even know it. Everything that was said about me in the presence of my children while they were supposed to be visiting and having quality time was a setup for brainwashing, was a setup for badmouthing, was a setup for them advocating their agenda through my children, using the kids against me so that they could win by not even trying, just what they were doing in those actions. Parental alienation looks just devastating. My biggest fear used to be losing my children. Something ever happened to my children, I don't know how I would go on. Knowing that there are grown parents that walk around on a daily basis and every normal, typical life event that they see, attend, or happen to go to, hear about, breaks their heart one more time. I didn't even know it was happening to me when my kids were little and we were going through this. Had I known, I don't know what I would have done, but I definitely would have fought harder. So I'll tell you, knowing that exists now, well, I'm grateful. But I'm just devastated for the parents that walk around every day who have children, my children's age. I have a granddaughter now. I have a grandchild. I'm part of her life. I care for her sometimes. I visit her. My daughter and I talk daily. We're talking today about stuff. I have that privilege, and it is a privilege because someone didn't steal it from me. I deserved it to begin with. It was my privilege for being a good parent, but I almost lost that, and I didn't even know it. I didn't even know it. And this adult person that I've been talking to has a true story of parent alienation, and it's horrible.
Yeah, it's rampant in this community where one parent, often the abuser, has turned the kids against the other parent, and it's devastating.
And the kids suffer. That's something that I can't even imagine. You know, taking me back to the moments that I explained where one child said, "Oh, why am I not in the front seat? Why can't I call someone else mom?" That devastation over their face, crying like that, when they come to the realization that someone was misleading them, and someone that was misleading them was someone they loved and trusted. I can't even imagine my 25, 21, and 19-year-old being estranged from me right now and picking up the phone and bawling their eyes out, realizing after 20 years that they alienated me because of something that someone else fed them that was lies.
Yep. So speaking of that, let's move to what you wanted to say to close this with, to give people hope who are dealing with this kind of thing.
Sorry, I'm emotional.
No, that's okay. This is all the time. I was going to say that one of the things we tell everybody in our legal abuse support group, and sometimes on our initial calls and other calls, is you never need to apologize for crying, cursing, kids, critters, complexion, and connectivity issues, because this happens all the time, but especially crying and cursing. So go ahead.
My kids and I have an amazing relationship. And quite often I am told that I did the right thing. And I'm just so blessed because this was my life. I had kids on purpose. I wanted these children, and I wanted to raise them, and I wanted to love them and teach them all the things in the world that they could use to make an amazing life. And every day I hear thank yous for what I've done for them. But most of all, just knowing that we made it. I say it so often. We made it. When I watched my son graduate from high school, when I watched my daughter graduate from the military, when I watched her get a new puppy, when I watched my granddaughter born from my oldest, who I knew she would be an amazing mother, I'm here. We're together. And we had fun times. Through everything, we still had fun. We connected. We're so connected. We're so tight. And they have now decided on their own, each individually, after enough tries with their other parent, that they want to sever those ties. that they're tired of certain things and they're not getting the love and understanding that they deserve. And that just our relationship is just so, so good. And I almost walked away because I was scared that one day, crying on my knees saying, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And they're living such great lives. I mean, they're just, and knowing that some of the things my kids have gone through, I've been relied on to support them through, and that I was able to be here for them. And that's what I meant to do. And by not giving up, by fighting for fighting for them, we were able to have this love, relationship, and life together for the last 17 years, 18 total.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Amber, and thanks for providing that hope that the kids do figure it out. That's something that many of us struggle with, is like, when are the kids going to see? Are they ever going to see? Because especially when they're younger, they're manipulated, and the other parent is like the fun parent and doesn't discipline and lets them do whatever they want and go to bed whenever they want, eat whatever they want, and you're just like, oh my gosh, is it ever going to happen? So it did happen for your 3 kids who are now adults and made that decision. I know my kids are also adults and made the same decision as well, and it's unfortunate, but you know, we have to seek healthy relationships, and we have to seek people who love and cherish us, and not just in romantic partners, but our kids should also have anyone involved in their lives really appreciate them and love them.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah. All right, so Amber, how can people find you if they want to talk more or have you do some kind of writing for them?
So thanks for asking. So I just started my kids will tell you I'm not really big on social media somewhat, but Family Matters with Amber on Instagram. I'm going to start a Family Matters with Amber podcast and talk about all sorts of different topics, the easy, the hard, and the fun. And that's probably just the best way to follow me.
Yeah, well, thank you again, Amber. I mean, some of this has been super helpful and also very validating and comforting. So ahead of time, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you, Lisa. You too.
Okay, we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks, Lisa. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.